Welcome back to OtakuDaiKun. Dai here. Type Moon's Fate franchise exists as a multimedia juggernaut, complete with visual novels, video games, sound dramas, and manga. While some of these manga are original works, such as Fate Extra Foxtail or Prisma Ilia, the vast majority are adaptations of existing works. Every artistic medium has its pros and cons, with manga being no exception. But while it's easy to think an anime or game provides a more full-fledged experience, that's not necessarily true. Manga often allows for a heavy artistic touch, with a style unified under a single artist. Rather than drawing hundreds upon thousands of pictures, an artist can hone in on the detail of a select few, often resulting in higher quality. Other times, the more you revisit a work, the more details and aspects about it can be explored. A manga may choose to include details or events not even present in the original, making it a valuable asset for fans wanting to unveil a story's full lore. A manga may also choose to alter classic events for better or worse. An example of this can be found in the Tsukihime manga, in which Shiki and Arcuade are given a special, manga-only ending that feels a lot more satisfying. It also combines a bunch of the novel's routes into a single narrative, which is usually a horrible idea, but it surprisingly works in this manga. Thus, for today, I want to dig through a number of manga adaptations from the Fate series to show you all the cool things they offer that their more popular originals don't. It's worth noting that many of these manga aren't finished or fully translated, but I won't let that stop me from having fun. Let's start off with the manga for Fate Zero, illustrated by the artist Shinjiro. Originally, Fate Zero was a light novel series that was later adapted into an anime by Studio UFO Table. In general, manga specializes in being snappy with its storytelling. It's not built for long expanses of dialogue, and as a derivative work, it seems Zero's author didn't want to simply retread the exact same scenes and shots from the anime. As a result, it zips through certain moments without enough detail. Generally, that makes me think it's inferior, but there are some noteworthy exceptions. For one, it lingers on the point where Kiritsugu and Airi summon Artoria, showing us visually how Kiritsugu laments the fact that King Arthur is a girl. Instead of just looking out the window, Artoria instead expresses her concerns while doing some flashy sword training. When Maya is first introduced, Kiritsugu gives more detail on how he sees her as a valuable asset to victory. They show a flashback of him instructing a younger Maya about how his origin bullets work. I definitely wish this scene were in the anime. In fact, a number of things were left out for the anime version, particularly more violent and disturbing stuff. However, since manga aren't broadcast publicly, they aren't as heavily regulated, allowing for more creative freedom. Fate Zero's manga is more accurate to the novel in that it fully shows all the gore. All of the horrible things Ryunosuke and Castor do to innocent children is drawn in more detail than most would even care to see. It's straight up Guro, but for those mature enough to handle it, I feel it enhances just how nightmarish these two bastards are. The more specific things shown are the human umbrella and pipe organ bits. If you don't know what I mean, you might consider yourself lucky. At least Ryunosuke's death is similarly gruesome. A bullet to the forehead is a lot messier than the anime implies. Of course, this extends to depictions of Sakura in the worm pit. The anime is almost wholesome by comparison. Not only are the worms more phallic, but they have a surveillance form that's like a creepy flying eyeball. When it comes to the servants, this manga does a better job of showing their pasts. Diarmuid, for example, is shown wounded after fighting a demon boar, and Finn McCool pretends to bring him healing water, but accidentally drops it midway. It's chilling, and I'm not sure why the anime didn't do it this way. Gilles de Rais is also shown committing the atrocities that had him executed. We all know Gilgamesh is an absolute monster in Zero and Stay Night, but the manga helps contextualize him a bit more. It depicts him mourning over Enkidu's final moments, bringing with it some well-needed sympathy. I like how the manga shows the aftermath of Iskandar stealing a barrel of wine from Taiga's friend. After all, there is that one audio drama that details Taiga's journey trying to find the culprit. The credits to Fate Zero show glimpses into Kiritsugu's past when he first met Airi. Well, the manga actually gives them a proper flashback. It would have been great to see this in the show. Lancelot's past is chronicled very briefly, actually showing us Guinevere, albeit in a shadowy form. She's one of the top characters that needs an official design ASAP. The epilogue to this manga is more thorough than the anime. Disturbingly, it has Kirei adopting all the orphans from the fire, and he takes them straight to the church's basement, where he'll be draining their mana to supply Gilgamesh. It has Kiritsugu adopting Shiro, and Taiga hanging out around the house with them. I like how it takes the time to show Taiga and Kiritsugu sparring kendo. There's even a sad moment where Shiro has nightmares about the fire. The two take to the dojo for a lecture on magecraft. All these little things that Fate Stay Night mentions are actually being shown here. Kiritsugu's death is more prominent here too. It's more visceral about showing his various attempts to save Ilya, but with the Grail's curse slowly killing him, he's too weak to make it through the Ainsburn's bounded field. There's a lot of contemplation of his life before he finally passes on. Then, going beyond the Call of Duty, the manga even has Waver being brought before Rhinus at the start of El Malloy case files. It's sad that the manga tends to rush through a lot of the story, but there are incredible moments where it truly shines, and it's a shame it hasn't been properly localized. If you've already seen the anime or read the visual novel though, it's worth tracking this down in Japanese. As far as I'm concerned, no one version is definitive, and you'll need to experience them all for the full effect. Moving ahead, there are actually 3 different manga adaptations of Stay Night. The oldest is one authored by Nishiwaki Dato. At first, it appears to be a safe, faithful adaptation, but it actually takes a lot of creative liberties. The manga initially feels too fast-paced and lackluster, but really settles into its own style just a few volumes in. Nishiwaki's art really evolves too. It pisses me off that translations for it drop after volume 15 of 20, and Viz, who owns the license to localize it, only has 10 of them. Fear not, however, as the raws are still obtainable beyond that point, and I'm here to show you what you can hope to find. It's kind of funny how, of all the times Shiro's been gashed by Heracles' sword, this one's the least shocking. Other moments worth note include how there's actually a flashback to Kiritsugu's funeral, where Taiga tells Shiro not to cry since he's a boy. Old-fashioned nonsense, if you ask me. Like Dean's Stay Night, this version tries to blend the various routes into one story. At times, it just makes shit up, like having Artoria come save Shiro when he encounters Ryder in the forest outside his school. This leads to Rin teaming up with Shiro without prior consent. There's a point where Shinji tries to punch Sakura, but it's actually Rin who saves her. Castor prematurely attacks Saber, starting a fight that doesn't happen in any of the routes. When Taiga challenges Saber to a duel over who gets to protect Shiro, we get a flashback of when she was winning kendo tournaments in school. Oh, and this sure ain't a bad way to show Shiro accidentally walking in on Saber in the bath. Several times, Shinji is shown punching his own servant, at first to seem trustworthy to Shiro, and later just because he's an abusive piece of shit. We actually see him bullying his fellow archery club members. Because Mitsuzuri stops him, he chooses to attack her at night in the city. Normally, we only see the end of this interaction, so the added clarity is appreciated. Ryder takes a bite into Mitsuzuri's neck while she's tied up against a wall. When Shiro and Rin find out she's in the hospital, Ilya decides to pop in for a surprise visit. Their chat in the park is now held on the hospital roof at night. Shinji gets a flashback to when he learned he had no potential as a mage. This kind of stuff was only mentioned in the original story. Oddly, Kirei visits Shinji in the city at night to warn him not to let anyone catch him harvesting mana from civilians, else he incur the Clock Tower's wrath. Can't be revealing magecraft to the outside world, after all. One chapter has Sakura reminiscing about the days when Shiro was still in the archery club and kinda got along with Shinji. When Saber and Ryder finally fight each other, they normally make their way up a skyscraper to the roof. In the manga, Ryder smashes Saber through one of the windows, and they fight on one of the building's floors. This lets Shiro reach the roof first, where he duels Shinji. This whole exchange is way more intense than in the novel or anime, with poor Saber getting launched toward the ground. In this version, after Ryder is defeated, Shinji isn't killed by Ilya and Berserker. Instead, part of the tower's roof collapses under him, and he plummets to his doom. To our surprise, though, he's saved at the last second by Ryder. But how? Well, the manga makes an early reveal that Sakura is actually Ryder's master, and that she used a command spell to save him. He's shocked to learn that she actually cares about him, given all he's put her through. Shinji recalls how, when he learned he wasn't the family's successor, he took all his anger out on her. I love being able to actually see these details. I've got to admit, this is the most convincing redemption arc he gets. At the hospital, Mitsuzuri tries to give him another chance at the archery club, and he instead confesses he put everyone in danger. She doesn't believe him, though. Ultimately, Shinji is given an opportunity to make things right, and he's genuinely remorseful. Now here's where it really gets good. The manga fleshes out a lot of Artoria's backstory. This is the most we see of her past outside of Garden of Avalon. We even get to see a depiction of Uther Pendragon. Unfortunately, this isn't exactly canon. A lot of these details aren't accurate anymore, such as Merlin being an old man. It's kinda like how Nasu changed Finn McCool's design for FGO, making parts of Zero inconsistent. Still, it's awesome to see a slightly different version of Artoria's past. So far, this manga has mainly followed the Fate route, but it takes a turn toward Unlimited Blade Works when Castor captures Artoria. For the first time ever, Kirei is actually shown holding a service at Fuyuki Church. I can't believe it. If only the patrons knew that there were orphans being tortured just beneath them. Now that Castor's a major threat, Rin quickly suspects Kuzuki is her master. It happens really quickly, but what's kinda cool is that Rin tries to interrogate Issei about the temple, activating a spell that has him try to kill her. This is a spin-off of one of the visual novel's bad endings. I've got an entire video dedicated to those if you're interested. It's called The Many Fails of Shiro Emiya. In a random twist, Castor is chased from the Ryudo Temple after a battle with Berserker, leading her to hide out in a rundown shack. Rin and Archer confront Castor and Kuzuki, but they have to fight their way past Saber first. Between Saber and Kuzuki, it's enough to convince Archer to join Castor's side. Facing this betrayal, Rin decides to do some drugs. Extract some blood for her gems. In an interlude chapter, we find out that the casual dress Saber wears was originally a gift from Kirei to Rin. At that time, Rin learned that Kirei had a daughter, and she thought she saw some genuine fatherly love in his eyes. Regardless, the clothes don't match Rin's image, and thinks Kirei's just giving her clothes every year to harass her. When Ku decides to help Shiro and Rin out, he actually stays at Shiro's mansion for a bit, eating all of their food. Before they set out, Ku spars with Shiro in the dojo. This is when Shiro starts to imitate Archer's fighting style. Eventually, Castor decides to claim the church as her new base, and we finally get to those nice captive Saber moments. The fight against Castor goes quite a bit differently. Castor has better control over Saber here, and she stops Rin from getting the upper hand. Desperate not to hurt Shiro, Artoria tries to stab herself, but Shiro somehow gets in the way and tanks the hit. It's only when Shiro is critically wounded like this that Archer steps in and kills Castor and Kuzuki. We get a nice chapter that shows Kuzuki's past, being trained as a killer. This was always one of the least developed parts of the story, even when expanded through Hollow Ataraxia. Once again, the manga does something the original kind of fails at. Unfortunately, the story is so desperate to hop between routes that it doesn't really make a lot of sense. Archer's ready to kill Shiro, but Rin actually convinces him to stop. Really? That's all it took? Our wounded Shiro passes out and dreams of Artoria's past. This flashback does a fantastic job showing how Artoria's war tactics were harsh, leading to her soldiers' distrust. Here, Shiro gets a hard-on for Caliburn like he does in the Fate route. At this point, though, Shiro shouldn't have a connection to Artoria anymore, but apparently Rin was able to restore his command spells. We really are jumping all over the place. Ilya wants to talk to Shiro again, so she has Sella pretend to be a nurse and trick him into heading to the hospital. It's kinda pointless, given how she shows up at Shiro's house that same night to abduct him. While that's weird, I appreciate how Ilya just comes out and reveals she's Shiro's adoptive sister. Luckily, since Rin's little pep talk worked, Archer's once again ready to sacrifice himself to help Shiro escape. Like in Dean Stay Night, the manga actually shows his battle with Berserker, just not all the way to its conclusion. Now, we sadly don't get the threesome scene, but we get the next best thing, topless Saber. Hell yeah! In another twist, their ritual to provide Saber mana doesn't work like it should, with Shiro getting strange marks on his skin. This is because the dragon's a hungry boy. Saber's afraid of being rejected, but Shiro embraces her. I vastly prefer this to the Dean Stay Night version, and if UFO Table does the Fate route, I'd want it to be done this way. The battle with Berserker is identical to the source material, but in another strange twist, it turns out Archer never fully killed Castor. She was only pretending to be dead, and now crazily attacks the Emiya estate. It lasts literal seconds before Gilga just kills her like in the Fate route proper. Things proceed quite faithfully, though I want to point out how Gilgamesh utterly destroys Shiro after the date scene. Another Artoria flashback shows us a very outdated design for Morgan Le Fay. I appreciate the eventual glow-up. I also like how this manga makes it abundantly clear that Saber and Shiro smash later that night. Holy shit, this manga doesn't hold back. This is what Shiro sees when he enters the church basement. Most eerie depiction yet. All the creepy tubes makes it even worse. I will say, with Ku already helping Shiro due to the unlimited bladework stuff, it actually supports the scene where he turns against Kirei in the Fate route. It's not as sudden this way. The manga takes us all the way to the Fate route's final battle. The Grail's corrupt mud, filled with death curses, is actually represented visually here. Instead of abstract text and a swarm of red faces blending together, this is more intense to me. At the very end, when Bedivere returns Excalibur to the Lady of the Lake, we get a rare artistic depiction of Vivian. Not sure how well it holds up now that we know Vivian is an aspect of Morgan Le Fay, but I still like it. The last pages of the manga imply the Rialta Nua last episode, which is more than what Dean gave us. While this manga was a bit rough around the edges, and clumsily blends Fate and UBW, I was pleasantly surprised by all the extra bits it included. It's also really interesting how they invented the best possible ending for Shinji, while not even touching on Heaven's Feel's content. It's definitely not a definitive version, but I highly recommend it anyway. If you want to see a one-shot manga that adapts Rialta Nua's last episode in more detail, check out Curtain Call. It's drawn by Nakatani and depicts Shiro finally reuniting with Artoria in Avalon. The visual novel does that in first person, but this shows both of them. The Unlimited Bladeworks manga by Daisuke Moriyama, while it has some lovely, polished art, rarely shows us anything that we haven't already seen from the anime. In that regard, I feel the anime is superior, but if you just can't get enough Fate Stay Night, the best part about this is that it's a visual delight. Early on, it does give us a good view at Shiro's childhood under Kiritsugu. This manga adds well-needed lightheartedness to the typically bleak narrative. Being an ongoing work, it has the benefit of being more up-to-date on official designs, such as when we see Artoria and Mordred fighting in the Battle of Camlon. Rungo Minyad is a very beefy lance, and there are plenty of earlier depictions that don't reflect that. Now, there's also an ongoing Heaven's Feel manga, authored by Task Onna. It starts off with a surprisingly adorable side of Shinji, dreaming of becoming a mage when he was a kid. We get to see Rider's summoning, which is a huge spoiler right off the bat compared to the original. Poor Sakura is used for the summoning, but then cast away like a tool. This manga's art is also fantastic, and I like how its story is focused on Sakura right from the get-go, opening with her first seeing Shiro failing at the high jump. Thanks to that bastard Zoken making Sakura into a Grail vessel, we see her dreaming about when the three families first instigated the Grail Wars. I really appreciate how, when Gilgamesh speaks to Sakura at night, we actually get his dialogue rather than a tease. Between the anime and visual novel, I always forget what he's supposed to say here, and I don't necessarily think keeping it a secret is beneficial. Hilariously, we see the birth of Shiro's most memed line, "People die when they are killed." Turns out Kiritsugu taught him the sentiment, along with his basic magecraft training. This manga shows the moment Sakura is first shown the worm pit, causing her to instantly vomit. It's fucking crazy. We also see when Sakura tells Zoken she doesn't want to fight in the war, and Shinji is chosen to fight instead. Part of her wants to participate, if only to ensure that Shiro and Rin don't wind up together. Kirei gives an early explanation of the three families, which is more helpful than any lecture he's given before. This is bundled with panels showing what happened across the first three wars. Rider's blood-sucking is a lot more erotic in this manga. Can't say I disapprove. It lends to the odd Yuri vibes that Mitsuzuri gets later on. We get to see the very moment when Shinji's dad, Byakuya, tells him he will never become a mage. When Shinji comes back to the Mato house following the Fourth War, he finds Byakuya drinking away his sorrows, his hand amputated after Kiritsugu shot it off. Shinji eventually follows Sakura into the hidden worm pit, only to learn he's been replaced. This is why he takes his anger out on Sakura, hitting and abusing her. He's literally been having his way with her all the way through the start of this war. In a very unique twist, Kuzuki is bit and cursed by a bug familiar. On the night true assassin is born, he is compelled by the curse to hurt Issei, visit Caster's workshop, and break the magic veins supporting her powers. By the time she gets back to the temple, Kuzuki has already beaten up all the monks in his rage. She subdues him and tries to cancel the curse with Rule Breaker, but it only causes his heart to explode. This makes her look like she killed her own master, so when Shiro and Artoria show up, they slay her. Hassan didn't have to lift a finger. When Ryder decides to drain mana from Shiro in his sleep, this manga fully commits to the hentai scene from the original novel. It's glorious, and I love it. Poor Shiro has another dream of the fire, but this time it has memories of his parents waking him up and telling him to wait outside. They have blank faces, so it's not like we know much about them, but it's still better than nothing. Later on, Shiro touches the shadow, getting visions of Angra Mainyu and all the world's evils. The way the manga shows this is just so creepy and awesome. Of course, the bug that bit Kuzuki was Zokin's doing, and he uses the same method to get a random woman to walk into his trap. This is how he procures more flesh for his decrepit bodies. We know Rin breaks into the Mato house and finds the worm pit, but the manga shows us even more. She finds Shinji there, and she mocks him for being incompetent, setting him off for the ensuing conflict. The crest worms in Sakura's body force her into erotic fits, and it's nasty how this manga displays the worms inside like a cross-section. Ryder eventually reveals herself to be Medusa, and her powers are explained alongside a show of Gorgon, which is a nice touch that older manga really couldn't give. This manga's still ongoing, but what's here so far is amazing. It remains faithful to the source material, even expanding on certain scenes, while incorporating newer visuals from the Heaven's Feel movies. It's almost like the best of both worlds, if you're willing to forego audio, animation, and color, that is. I initially conceived of this as being a single video, but we've only just finished all the Stay Night stuff. We've still got Apocrypha, Grand Order, and more. Let's continue this journey into the Fate series manga adaptations next time. Until then, let me know what you thought of these in the comments below. Thanks for watching.
If you enjoy this channel, help us grow by liking, commenting, sharing the video, subscribing to OtakuDaiKun, and
most of all, smashing that notification bell so you don't miss out on all our anime lore, discussions, and Let's Play content.
you can support us directly through Patreon, Subscribestar, or a YouTube membership, all of which come with benefits like spicy exclusive vids and early access.
As always, celebrate your fandom. I want to give a special shout out to all my $10 and up supporters: VideoGamer75, Dante Pendragon, Stephen Elak, Samuel Gersten, The Nonchalant Ostrich, Otaku Mom, Jens Ballman, Mystic Samurai 1983, Lord Ormagoden, Freebrick, Alexis Yukio Gomez Yamato, Link Pendrago, Observer Bellis, James Hewitt, Uncanny EXP, Zamas Autonomous, Scout, Yuki Eidos, Crow Kalem, Saul Soto, Tristan Riggin, Major, Caitlin P., Sogai CH, Vladimir Rovna, The Taz 96, Jonathan Padua, Kengo X77, Hersha of E-Rated Hands, Alester Bernadotte, and Akakaze Yume. Thank you all so much.